So I think we'll give it a bit of time now for any of our speakers who wish to respond to anything the others brought up, but perhaps to bring us closer to the heart of the question here. So perhaps, Charlotte or James, is there anything that you, just to begin with, wanted to...
Yeah, okay. So I guess there are a couple of things. It's unfortunate, David, in some ways, because you come to the controversial part last, right? And you know, I don't think anyone in this room is going to disagree that there is a sort of liberal consensus in the political mainstream that yes, there is over-representation of a very sort of relatively narrow worldview, which is produced, to my mind, through a very, very kind of constrained social background for those who are in Parliament, those who are running the country, those who run the media. But maybe I'll come back to that and just pick up on something else, which is it's funny that you should mention the death penalty, because death penalty is the test in some ways of how you think about politics, because it presents problems for Democrats, it presents problems for people who like democracy, because if you had a referendum in this country on the death penalty tomorrow, the death penalty would be re-established. There is consistently a majority for the re-establishment of the death penalty in this country. There has been.
Come down from about 75% to around 50%.
Yeah, but the indications are that it would very likely be re-established their referendum tomorrow. British social attitudes, I think, is not 50 to 55.
About 50, but you had lower turnout amongst supporters of the death penalty.
Yeah, that's probably true. but look, this is a problem, okay? This is a problem, that actually, that there are matters that require political judgment on the part of a political class, which many people in this room would be very uncomfortable, although we are just instinctive Democrats, at giving over to referendums. So this leads us, I think, interestingly, into the question of Brexit. And, you know, I wonder about this division, this anywhere/somewhere thing. So I don't think it's necessarily a particularly controversial thing to say, right? Like, I don't think it's, I think anyone would argue with it. I suppose my question is twofold. I mean, you're very careful to say, and I think it's important that you say that both of these views are legitimate, but I think it's also clear that you're engaging with polemic on behalf of people who think are left out of a British political line. And I think that's probably legitimate. But you spend a lot of time building the case and then come to sort of migration and things like that last. But these are things that have been fundamental to the way that this divide has been articulated in this country, not just in the run-up to the Brexit referendum, but for the last 20, 30 years. And it goes back further even than Blair, I think. And, you know, I mean, we can talk about the Blair period, that might be interesting as well. So it seems to me that this divide might have dependent on it all sorts of differing and opposed cultural values, yeah? But the thing that is the crunch issue and the thing that causes demonstrations in the street, that has caused endless social media furore over the course of the past 2 days, has been about migration and cultural integration. And that, to me, it seems is the thing that you're actually talking about, right? Like, it's the thing that exacerbates that divide. It's the thing that makes people furious with each other. And, you know, to disguise it as, that being, equally, just another issue that divides the two camps, rather than the central issue that then gets disguised as conflict about other things, I think is really questionable. And so, I think one of the things that frustrates me about this argument is that I think there are lots of really important things being said here. There are really important things about the way in which this country treats the vast majority of people, but they are primarily socioeconomic, and that matters. Now, I am not like some unthinking Marxist, in that I don't think that the superstructural issues, as we used to call them, are irrelevant. I think cultural issues matter, and they dictate the course of politics in this country much more than some of us would like to admit. But it seems to me that the answer to the question, and it's funny that you should say that '02 is the moment that inaugurates a new moment in populist politics, because it seems to me that the big thing we're not talking about is the financial crisis. And I think that has an enormous amount to do with the way in which these issues divide people in Britain today. And I wonder how you account for that. So it sounds like I'm attacking David now. It's not saying, although I'm sure he's used to it.
So David, if you respond, and then Charles will give you a chance to adjudicate on the issue.
I think economic and cultural things are so closely woven together, it's very difficult to separate them. But I think if one can, I would definitely say this is a more cultural thing than an economic thing. If it was a straightforwardly economic thing, and in 2008 was really such a moment of change, we would have much more left-wing populism. We don't, with the exception of a few Corbynistas perhaps, who are about to get walloped in a general election. The only places where we have left-wing populism is where the economies of the state have been completely destroyed by the euro, Greece in particular, Spain to a lesser extent. I do think immigration is important, and it has become a kind of emblematic issue too, about social change. Over-rapid social change that anywhere serve more comfortably in some ways. I'm not trying to hide anything. I wrote a book about immigration 2 or 3 years ago. I'm very interested in it. I think it's very important, and I think probably the single most decisive moment in the Brexit campaign, or in the Brexit referendum rather, came in 2004, when we opened our doors to the Eastern and Central Europeans 7 years before we had to. Itself a decision which revealed just how far from its blue-collar roots the Labour Party had wandered. I mean, the Labour Party, like most centre-left parties in Europe now, is a party of liberal graduates. It has a higher vote share than the Dutch Labour Party that used to run Holland, which is now down to 6%. The Socialist Party in France, it got 7%, I think, in the presidential election. At least you're going to get in the 20s. So things could be worse. But 2004 was also absolutely decisive in that it revealed to people the nature of the response to globalization. The problem is the cure is often worse than the disease with globalization. You were talking about globalization in your first statement, and taking on global capital. The trouble is, you take on global capital with a means that ends up making you just as impotent as global capital itself. This is what people are objecting to, I think. I mean, we have a form of globalization which has become much more intrusive into national politics. WTO, in the old days, GATT globalization in the 60s and 70s was mainly about manufactured goods, it was mainly between industrial countries, but there were many more national vetoes in the system. With WTO globalization, you have a huge amount more intervention into the politics of nation states. So, what is it to be a nation state? It's to have sort of collective preferences about certain things, about the degree of risk you want to take in your society, about GM foods or about financial products. And you're not allowed to have to express those preferences in the modern globalization system, which is partly what people protest against. They protest against the WTO, they protest against Brussels, because it's kind of flattening the system. But the problem is the response to globalization, the modern European Union, in which we have this, this sort of collective response that we can apparently sort of harness the forces or fight back against the forces of capital. They end up intruding into the nation state just as offensively as the WTO, and more so in some ways, and removing from the democratic contest so much of politics. How much of our legislation ended up coming from Brussels? And 2004 was a brilliant example of that. We had, back to the immigration story, because I think you're right, I mean, it's very important because it's such an existential thing about a country. Countries belong to the people in it. They don't belong to the whole world, they belong to us. And we should decide, who comes into the country and who doesn't. I hope we have a relatively generous immigration policy that should be decided at the level of the nation state. And we discovered in 2004 that it wasn't any longer. With post-colonial immigration, people had come in the 50s and the 60s, and there was some conflict, but people had settled down and people got used to it. And by the 80s and the 90s, we come to terms with being a multi-ethnic, multi-racial society. We were not then a mass immigration society, we were a multi-ethnic society. But governments were able to respond to the anxieties of people and bear down on numbers, and they did in the by the late 80s, early 90s, net immigration was 0 or even minus in Britain. Come 2004, when 15,000 East Europeans were meant to come, in fact about 1.5 million came over a 4 or 5 year period, and people didn't like it. But Parliament was unable to do anything. Parliament was unable to do anything, as it had been able to do something in the 80s and 90s. And I think that's probably the thing. And people woke up to the fact that actually being a member of the European Union really does constrain your national democracy in really fundamental serious ways. And a lot of people didn't want that, I think, for perfectly legitimate reasons. I don't think that's xenophobic. It could maybe xenophobic on the part of some people, but you shouldn't judge a case by its worst exemplars. So yes, immigration is important, but it's important, I think, as a sort of broader symbol of people wanting to slow down social change, and I certainly don't think it's the only thing. Like a whole list of things, the education policy, our neglect of technical and vocational education, and putting all our eggs in the higher education basket, which is again suited the anywhere interests. As I said, family policy, the technocratic state, but so many other things that have constrained the interests, or actually worked against the interests of many somewhat people.
So Charles, we'd like to share your views there. Is 20% really all the Corbynistas can be going forward?
Well, I mean, in the 20s,
in the 20s.
Yeah, I mean,
very generous.
I know a few people that put a tenner on Corbyn when it was 200 to 1 to get Labour leader. So, I mean, fingers crossed. Bizrat Hashem, as we say in Judaism. One never knows, although, I'm a realist and not particularly hopeful about our chances. But the question for me is really, I obviously like the idea of a decent populism, not least because I like the idea of Labour winning an election. And I think that, if we could capture that, we'd have a much better chance. But I suppose my main sort of question really to the other people on the panel, and to the audience as well, it'd be, can we build a left populism in what is essentially a two-party state? Because I think naturally the parties are both sort of becoming very equivocating, they're trying to capture, the middle ground, and neither of them are necessarily coming out with anything that could be considered necessarily decent populism. I mean, talking about the immigration debate, rather than sort of detoxifying the issue over the past, 10 to 15 years or so, Labour has played into this idea about, legitimate concerns and so on. And I mean, there are legitimate concerns about immigration, but the legitimate concerns that we were talking about were not the legitimate concerns, if that makes sense. It's the fact that we've completely looked over that because of our slowing birth rate, that we actually need 130,000 immigrants a year so that our economy doesn't get completely tanked. And no one's talking about that and the problems that we're having in Japan, because it's actually much easier to say, let's get it down to the tens of thousands, let's get it down to 0, let's, no one's actually making a case that is the one that needs to be made. And I don't think that either of the parties are necessarily talking about the big issues of the future. I work in the logistics industry, and automation is going to mean that 90,000 jobs in the sector are lost over the next 10 years. Neither of the parties are talking about things like, a 4-day working week, for example, or basic income and ideas like this. They're talking about as if we can still get full employment in 2025, which I don't think that we can. And I think the other thing about decent populism is how depoliticised the society that we live in is. I mean, one of the things that I found quite horrifying about what happened in Manchester earlier this week, beyond the obvious incident itself, is people saying that we shouldn't politicise what happened. But yet we're having the army put out onto the streets, We're, you know, not talking about the fact that, you know, cuts in policing, you know, does that mean that we're less safe as a society, but we can't make these points without people being offended by the idea of politicizing things? And it's an argument that you hear quite a lot, you know, politicization about things that are inherently political. You know, how can we build a left populism or a decent populism without actually having these political conversations that need to be had? So kind of, yeah, just wanted to throw that out to everyone really, because, you know, I would like to leave today with something I could take back to the Labour Party, and maybe the answer is in this room.
Oh, fantastic. So, yeah, hand of applause. Round of applause.